What experiences have you had that made you first dream up art finished by weather?
Same place as you, PaddyO. Same place as you.
Where? Did you also grow up on the outskirts of Chicago and pronounce all your vowels with the nasal accent? Do you have an outsized love of bratwurst and hot dogs? What are you talking about?
I call those tube meats, and yes, tube
They're the
meats
best
are
meats.
they're fantastic. You can open up a tube meat and do a thing, Like I think it's a fine way to travel meat. I'm like, I feel
right.
like I'm a tube meat.
We're all
Where
just
do these...
hot dogs when you think of it.
Yeah, totally.
This is the Outside Podcast with PaddyO. I didn't really think of myself as an outdoorsy person until after college. Over the course of a bunch of family vacations when I was a kid, I saw things like skiing and hiking and mountain biking as aspirational. Those were things I could try when I was older and maybe more rugged. And back then I understood where the real outdoors was. The woods of Michigan and Wisconsin, the mountains of Utah, the deserts of Arizona. By the time I graduated from school, I had enough gear to feel ready to head to Colorado to finally get outside. In retrospect, that whole framework was, well, it was kind of dumb. Growing up in Chicago, I spent much of my childhood outside, in the park or the pool or the few forest preserves nearby. All of those places are outdoors, and all of them enveloped me in fresh air, open space, and experiences that connected me to a trajectory that I eventually realized started long before I had a 4-season tent, a set of skis, and a carabiner clipped to a water bottle. If you want to talk to somebody whose connection to the outdoors predates every single memory he has, talk to Cannupa Hanska Luger. Cannupa is... Actually, I'm going to let him tell you who he is.
Docha Maragua. I am Cannupa Hanska Luger. I'm Awake, that's his Dripping Earth clan from the Mandan Hidatsa Rickarraw tribes. I am an enrolled member of that tribe. My father's Lakota, and I was born on the Standing Rock Reservation in a town called Fort Yates, and it juts out into Lake Oahe. I guess my primary identifier externally would have to be artist. I think artist is an accurate descriptor as far as profession goes. I think of myself as a social engineer.
Sculptor, painter, author, performer. You could call Cannupa a multi-hyphenate, but you'll quickly run out of hyphens. And his work defies description, but there are two themes that persist through most of it. The first is a retro-futurism that has to be seen to be believed. As you're about to hear, Cannupa's concept of time, which is as rooted in Indigenous tradition as it is in astrophysics, will blow your mind. And this often shows up in his work as a kind of science fiction that looks like it's from the part of the multiverse where the Avengers are all Native American living in Wakanda, but it's actually the Four Corners. The second theme in Cannupa's work is that nature is the final medium. Much of it is explicitly meant to be finished by the elements. Whatever you see on the day it's unveiled doesn't look the way it's supposed to look until years of wind, rain, sun, and gravity take their own paths on the materials, like the melting clay walls he crafted for the University of Michigan Museum of Art, or the rusting Corten steel buffalo skeleton he built to emerge from the ground in New York City's City Hall Park. But as heady as Cannupa's worldview can get, and it gets pretty out there, it's all rooted in an understanding of the world that he developed as a kid, working, playing, and living on his family's ranch on the Standing Rock Reservation that straddles the border between North and South Dakota. That's a world in which the past and the future are always present, and there's no such thing as inside at all. First things first, burnt toast. What's your last humbling and or hilarious moment outside?
Outside. Would, like, defecating in your pants be one of those sorts of things? It's definitely happened outside.
Yes,
actually, I have
a big yes here
Well,
at the Outside Podcast.
Now to think about it, the last time that happened was actually not outside. I was in the world, but I was in a car, so I don't think I can count that one. And I was stuck in traffic because we have this thing in our family that we call Deuces Wild.
Oh.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, we had a lot of projects kind of cooking still, and it involved travel. And it was travel across the like middle of the country, places where it was like, there is no pandemic. Like, we're not going to wear masks. We're not doing any of this stuff. So we just avoided gas station interiors in total.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I had to convince my kids that it was okay to just poop outside. And we got...
I mean, it is.
It's okay.
Typically, you're in some sort of camping situation when that happens, or on some sort of backcountry travel. You're not like, hey, we stopped at a gas station in Ohio.
Nobody had masks on, so we shit in the back lot.
Okay. I think that is pretty damn hilarious and humbling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's humbling in a way. Man, if I could, that would be my preferred method. I've got a solid deep squat. And, I'm 47 years old, and being able to do that still with like my body is a sense of glory, and I'm like, dude, this is preferred methodology.
In doing the research for this interview, I did not see starting here.
That didn't come up?
Defecating in the back of the gas station in the back lot. I did not see that, but you know what? Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I will say it was never in the back lot of the gas station. There are much prettier places to go across the country, and we would choose, It's like, we'll do that here. We'll get gas at the gas station. We'll do the other thing.
Listen, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but maybe your next art piece is just a giant map of the middle of America with like best places to poop outside.
No, you can't let anybody else know, dude. This place is hungry for a trend.
All right, let's get into it. Aside from the art, how do you spend your time?
Man, it's blurry. It's real blurry. I veered away from the big studio assistants kind of model of art making, which means I put a lot of time in the studio. But because of my career, I travel a lot. And in those travels, it's usually work related, but I like to take my family along with me so that we get some sort of vacation out of the travel. I think that's probably one of my more favored things is walking the place that I'm in with, fam in tow, looking for food. Yeah. I feel like you can really get to know a place by the food that is around.
Well, how do you blow off steam, let's say? Like when you're just like, man, I've had it with the studio today. I'm done. Like I got to go for a run or a bike ride, or do you fish?
Yeah. You know what? I just recently got poles. I got Tenkara poles for me and my boys, and I have never fished with a pole in my life.
What's a Tenkara pole?
It's the oldest form of pole of rod fishing, but there's no reel on it. You have a really long pole and a string that's the same length. So think like Huck Finn,
Sweet.
But it's akin to fly fishing, but they make them now and they're collapsible so you can backpack it.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. It's like a 20 some foot long pole, but it collapses down to like, I don't know, 20 inches maybe.
And you guys backpack and you guys will camp with that?
Yeah. Where I live in Glorieta, New Mexico, right across the interstate from my place is a Pecos National Forest, and there's a river, and it's kind of some legit fly fishing river.
Sweet. Okay, well, let's get into that, okay? Because I find the relationship between place and experiences within that place, how it shows up in artwork, absolutely fascinating. You know how prospect and refuge of the desert is represented in a painting, or how the sounds of waves will morph guitar sounds in a song, or how windswept peaks will influence and shape the form of a sculpture, let's say. Now, your artwork has this very deep connection to the land. Do you remember the first time you were actively moving in the wilderness and the experience inspired you to create something?
I feel like I've lived most of my life outside, from childhood up to present. As you're asking me, what do I do to blow off some steam? I live pretty rurally out here. So like hiking, all of these sorts of things. This is just like a walk around the neighborhood for me, There's a 2-mile trail that runs right off the back of my property. My backyard is BLM land, and there is a mesa. I live on the edge of Roe Mesa, and I just go straight back through the woods and go to the top of the mesa and come back. But it's just, it seems so regular. But thinking about how it affects art or art inspired by, I have a hard time making the assumption that there's an alternative to that by any creative person or any endeavor, that the environment that we inhabit does inform not just our creativity or sources of inspiration.
Yeah.
It is the source of our phenotypes. It's the source of our culture. It's it's like the source that's so much deeper than that I think to not see it is more of a practice of active avoidance than accepting the fact that we are an extension of our environment. We're an extension of the land. And so anything that I make creatively, I think, is informed by that. But I've chosen to do a thing with my performance work where my primary audience is the land, so that the work actually inhabits an environment rather than a stage or an audience. I'm like, let's do this outside. Let's do this on the land. We can record it. We can film it. We can bring in pieces of it. But I think the initial spark of inspiration from the human species was one that was to dance, sing, or create in reverence of place. And I want to maintain that the best that I can in a technospherical world.
The reverence for place, do you think that that is something that you grew into over time as you were growing up, or is that something that just has always been a part of you?
I think that's probably one of the distinct advantages of my life, is that reverence for place is just customary within the cultural upbringing that I had.
Yeah.
You don't look at place as resource, you first recognize and hold it with reverence. And from that place, you can see how bountiful it is. And in doing so, you recognize that the idea of collection, cultivation leads towards surplus, and surplus leads towards hoarding. And I'm like, where the best place to preserve anything is like on the stock, like as it's alive. The thing itself is designed for self-preservation, So just being able to like kind of start from that place, and that being customary kind of indigenous knowledge that I was brought up with, it's been more of a trick to adapt to the alternative.
I feel like almost what you're getting at here is like... Sometimes when I ask like professional athletes, like I'll ask a professional skier, like, what was your first day skiing like? And it's kind of like asking a bird, what was your first day flying like? It's like, I don't know. It's just kind of always been there, because it's just what my family does. It was just how I was brought up. Is that kind of what you're saying? How you were brought up? This reverence for place was just always there. And there never really was a separation of like, hey, this is indoor time versus your outdoor time. It's not like the outdoors were a place that you went to, because it was just always there, always surrounding you.
I was born in 1979. I think through the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, it was a privilege to come inside. If you were inside, it was like, go outside. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
My dad's side of the family, they're all cattle ranchers. So like our work was literally outside, and we would be outside all day. That's why I'm saying, like, if I calculated the hours, I don't think I've yet put enough inside hours in to offset the outside hours.
Well, when you were a kid growing up on the Standing Rock Reservation, like, can you describe, kind of for the audience who might not know it, like describe the terrain and how you spent your time there as a child?
Oh yeah. Okay. You wake up with the sun. On a ranch, there's always something to be done. The word bored was like the unholiest of curses that could ever be uttered.
BORED didn't exist. BOARD was like, get the board because we're building some fences or something.
Totally. Or I bored 3 holes in that thing. But on days off, we would go to the river and play in the river. I was telling you that I just got these fishing poles.
Yeah.
I fished every other single way there is to fish than poles. We used to make spears when I was a kid, Lake Oahe is a lake that's produced from a dam downstream, and it flooded the Standing Rock Reservation. And this was like in the late 40s, early 50s that this dam was put up. All along the river were these cottonwood forests, and all of that got flooded in the 50s. So when I was a kid, all of those forests released from the bottom of the river, and the logs of these cottonwoods floated to the surface and would create these like log jams that would jut out into the lake. So we would just walk on those and go spearfishing. Like trying to throw a hook in a mess like that was like a waste of time.
Yeah. There's no way to get a knot in your line if you don't have a line.
Exactly.
Nice. Smart moves.
We made spears out of old, there's a piece of farming equipment called a swather, and it's what's used to cut hay or grain or whatever. Anyway, it has this big tumbling barrel of pushing blades,
Okay.
And
this is something, an implement that goes on like a tractor or something?
Goes on the front end of a tractor. Usually the tractor itself is the thing, like they design it specifically. But there were these old ones kicking around that were just kind of in the behind the shops and stuff like that. So those blades were made out of oak, and they were like 20 feet long. So we would weld steel to those, and that was our spears, these 20-foot long oak blades.
You wouldn't like just shave them down to a point?
No, they were.
Tipped?
Oh, no. A point is for the novice, dude. We were...
Oh my God, dude.
We were making barbed
How old are you
spears
at this point?
Well, okay, so I was probably like, I had been doing that from like
is this
probably,
like Fisher-Price, babies versus acetylene torch?
Well, here's the thing. You got to understand, like, I'm one of 6 siblings,
Yeah.
And then I have extended family and cousins. So the age of the youngest there's a median age that is the totality of all of us rolling in pack,
I get that. I grew up in a very large family, and I absolutely understand that.
Totally. So like, I shouldn't have been out there, but I knew where I was. Yeah. Where I couldn't go was home, so like out there it was, probably like 7, 8, in that range, rolling with the cousins.
Wild and amazing, and in every way, just like you said, very Huckleberry Finn, which
totally,
as an English major, it makes my heart feel very good. It seems like you had this very like idyllic, outdoorsy upbringing in many ways, manual labor aside, but spearfishing and spending your time like in these like just dreamy, cottonwood forests and along the lakes and rivers sounds incredible. And I think that a lot of outdoor folks like that see themselves as very connected to the land. But I think we mostly see ourselves as like travelers upon it or within it via our passions, skiers moving through snow, mountain bikers careening through woods, runners plodding along trails. So how does that idea differ from the relationship with the land in the Lakota tradition?
We're talking about a nomadic people, right? Like that idea of place, it gets blurry when the customary practices, the culture, the everything is built around this idea of movement, right? Like your history, your kinships, your songs, your culture, all of these things were carried. I think about this in the sense of like, how does my thinking differ dramatically to the place in which is the country of the United States? How is Indigenous thinking different? And I think there is something in the idea that you can possess something so vast as the land that puts in motion this idea of control, dominion. I don't know what the language is, but if you can carve out your piece, like this is the narrative that followed the kind of like American dream, is like everybody gets a little piece of land, whatever it is, and that's theirs. And, I think the baseline understanding of Lakota and many indigenous tribes, Mandans, Hidatsas, the baseline is you are an extension of place. The land doesn't belong to you. You belong to the land. And in that sense, shelter, home, culture. These are things that you carry, and you don't exhaust the land by being sedentary. You pay attention to the effects of your being there, and you know when to move.
So it's reciprocal rather than extractive.
I think so. I mean, I would say yes, but there's also a distinct awareness that the land is like life is abrasive, right? Like as much as you push and plow and cultivate in a place, it pushes and pulls and cultivates in you.
Where you grew up in South Dakota looks a lot different than where you live now in New Mexico. Can you compare and contrast your relationship to the New Mexican landscape with your relationship to Standing Rock? Like, how are they similar? How are they different?
Yeah, they're different. Standing Rock, it crosses over the North Dakota-South Dakota border. So I was born in North Dakota. And North Dakota, along the river, you get these really beautiful kind of like rolling plains, you know, but a glacier rolled through back in the day, as they do.
Yes.
And it scoured the tops of all of the hills. So we call those the flats. So you get up to this point out of the river valley, and it's a plain. It's pretty flat. Hills are capped at a certain height, and they all have this same height kind of flatness as this glacier receded. And man, I mean, I still call North Dakota home. Like, there is something deep in the tall grasses, you know, the expanse in which you can see, that is so comforting to me. And where I live presently, my home's at 8,000 feet. I'm in the mountains. New Mexico has several different environments. The one that I live in is tall ponderosa pine, reddish iron oxide kind of soil, sandstones kind of jutting out, rocks covered in these like sagey, minty green articulations, you know, and then you've got scrub oak kind of filling in the base. I'm describing it by looking at it literally out the windows in front of me. If it sounds particularly poetic, I'm just like, no, this is what I'm looking at right now. Juniper, pinon, you know, these are the trees that kind of are in this place, and it's vertical. My whole property is at a 15 to 35 degree slope. It's vastly different than the place in which I was born.
Well, does one make you feel differently than the other? Does one influence your creativity differently than the other?
I think they do, but you know what I did? I'm river peeps, you know, I'm river people.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a river here. There's a river called the Rio Grande, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I can walk across the Rio Grande. When you grew up on the Missouri, like, I suppose it's grand. I suppose it's long. I suppose it's pretty long. But where I live, it's a mountain pass. And so the point right outside of my home has been a place of passage from time immemorial, you know? And I think of that, then this is just probably river people trying to live in the mountains, but I think of it as like like a river. You know, it's a place of movement. It's constantly in flux and it changes. And I think that's the informative aspect of my cultural upbringing that exists within my artwork, is a recognition of transformation. You know, things do change. Knowing what to hold on to, knowing what to let go of, and knowing to recognize that nothing is static. It's all in flux. I think that as a model for somebody who makes static objects or, you know, variations on that is something that I'm kind of constantly in conversation with, is like, what is the fluidity of this standard object, this physical thing? And I would define art not in the object that comes out of it, but the process in which it's created. And that process is constantly changing.
Perfect segue into my next question, which is about your creative process. How does being outside influence the way that you create? Where does it like fit into your creative process? Is it like every morning you go for a trail run or a bike ride or a walk, or you go fishing and then you get into the studio? Is outside time something you do to break up the day in the middle of it? Is it your like wash the studio off of you like type of movement at the end of the day? How does it fit into where and how you create?
Yeah, well, my studio is like probably 100 yards from my home. So I've got a 100-yard dash in the morning to get to my studio. That's outside.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in such a beautiful place. We all live in such a beautiful place that making space for me to enjoy all of that isn't very hard. I don't have to go very far to enjoy that. And I like just being in the outside. So my studio has a huge garage door that it takes like a pretty stiff, cold wind for me to close it up. There's something really nice about having that inside outside. Plus, it's pretty arid here. And when I'm working in clay, an arid environment is actually really helpful, as far as sculpting, drying the clay and building. And then, there's steel fab and different things. So like a lot of the times I take the work outside of my studio. The studio is like where the tools live and where specific, kiln, whatever, all of these sorts of things exist. But a lot of the work that I'm doing is actually trying to bridge a gap between myself, my cultural upbringing, being an extension of the land. You kind of exist as ambassador in a lot of times, whether you like it or not. Being an Indigenous artist, oftentimes you're tokenized, and you do have to represent. Yeah. And I ain't mad at it. I'm like, it's not fair, but nothing is. And so how do you better inform the population that would reduce somebody to a token on the depth and scale of what is being simplified? And I think the only way to do that is to communicate. And I find the best way to communicate for me is with artwork. It's a language that nations have a hard time stifling, right? Like it's a language that is hard to be removed. And I come from people who that was an active attempt, So speaking in that language is important. And what is the conversation? The conversation is like, you too are a part of this place. I think that there is a longing particularly in our country, there is a deep desire to belong to place. Oh yeah. And I think some maniac influenced us all thinking that you can belong by having belongings, And so there's a hole that's trying to be filled with possessions, but the reality is the hole isn't in you. The hole is in the place, the shape of you. So how do I create artwork that informs a population that belonging doesn't start with possession? Belonging starts with acceptance, that you are, no matter what you believe, no matter how toxic your practices get, you are still a part of the land. You are still a part of the place. The order in which I was raised under and the order in which I just see, and I'm like, maybe it's because of the influence of upbringing, nature, nurture, all of those sorts of things. I think both nature and nurture for me said, we're a part of this, this is not ours. We're a part of it. So union feels like the natural order. And, my optimism is that reunion's inevitable.
When we're talking about installations that you do, we're talking about natural materials and working with your hands. We're talking about the traditional materials, industrial materials. One of the things that's really intriguing to me, though, is that you've described some of your installations as being, quote, finished by the weather, which is super interesting to me. Like, for example, you used white clay for a piece on the exterior of a building at the University of Michigan. So how does an idea like that form in your noggin? Like, what places have you been to, or what experiences have you had that made you first dream up art finished by weather?
Same place as you, PaddyO. Same place as you.
Where? Did you also grow up on the outskirts of Chicago and pronounce all your vowels with the nasal accent? Do you have an outsized love of bratwurst and hot dogs? What are you talking about?
I call those tube meats, and yes, tube meats
are the best meats.
They're fantastic. You can open up a tube meat and do a thing, Like, I think it's a fine way to travel meat. I'm like, I feel like I'm a tube meat.
We're all just hot dogs when you think of it.
Yeah, totally. You don't want to see the process. I think a lot of the ideas that I have linger and sit as inspiration. I mean, for sure, by the land. Like, you want to take a leap and say, I want to make this artwork be finished by the weather. Like, that's all of them. Yeah. That's every single art object ever created and ever will be created is subject to being finished by the weather. weather has agency in this thing. And I'm just leaning into the agency of place and environment. The idea was, okay, so I'm looking at the exterior of the University of Michigan's Museum of Art. There's a pervasive narrative in the imagination and the dreaming of the United States, which is that longing for a deep time relationship to place is impossible when you don't have it, right? But can you generate something that everybody has to see that reinforces this idea? And what I'm talking about specifically is the like neoclassical Greco-Roman architecture of our universities, our museums and institutions, our houses and centers of governance. There is a nefarious, in my opinion, but I have a very specific cultural background, implementation of a illusion of deep time in America, right?
Oh, because it's a callback to something quote unquote ancient.
Exactly. And ancient Western, like this is the seed of civilization. The bringing of civilization was the justification of the violence. And so you have to build this architecture that inhabits the brains of our youngest and our brightest. They're all smart enough to know, like, this ain't a Roman Colosseum. This ain't the Parthenon, like, obviously. But the subconscious effect of, next time you roll through a university, the subconscious effect of seeing old European architecture in the United States gets real suspect once you're informed by what I'm telling you right now, right? So this museum took on that form, this part of the museum. And when I see those spaces, it's a trigger for me. I look at these buildings and they feel like spaces that I'm not safe in. My gut impulse is, this is a white space. Do I have access to this space because it is a white space? And then my question was, what does that even mean? Like, if it's white, let's make it actually white. Like, let's cover the surface of this building, which was made of a beautiful yellow sandstone carved out of Ohio. But in my head, it is Carrara marble, even though it's not. In my head, it is. And so I was like, let's recreate that using clay from Georgia. Let's cover the surface of this building. Let's make it white. So the weather runs the whiteness off of the building. And if I watch that transformation, if the students who are navigating this space, who have similar feelings like me, see that transition and see that process, does it provide access to the museum? If they can see the whiteness of it, see the Carrara, see the history, actually melt through something as simple as rain, which is guaranteed in Michigan. Describe that. So the piece was finished by the weather, because really the piece is finished by the perception of the student body that's going to see, that saw that transition through time. And of course, I'm looking at nature and I'm like, dude, it's all slowly being worn away. All of these edifices of permanence are, through something as gentle as rain, are being worn down. And I see it in our buildings, but I see it on the shore, in the mountains, at a river.
I think I understand how creating something in clay on the outside of a building can represent that impermanence when it's washed away by rain. But you also have installed sculptures in rivers, atop mountains, buried in dirt, erected in parks. So how does the weather finish the art in those locations?
Well, one of the pieces that I'm thinking of that was really kind of sensitive to the idea of weather and change was a public artwork that was done with the Public Art Fund in New York City. Outside of City Hall Park, there's a Great Seal of New York. And in that site, I brought in a Corten steel retaining wall, which will rust, but it won't disintegrate. And in that, we put soil and planted indigenous grasses to the region. And emerging from that field of grass and wildflowers was a steel skeleton of buffalo. And that steel, we blackened it, but the idea was it would rust and it would change over the duration of it being exposed to New York City. The acids from exhausts, the rain, the environment, the population,
This is the sculpture Attrition, right?
This is the sculpture Attrition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And in that, I was trying to inform our population, something that's, near and dear to me, but is our relationship to buffalo and how how buffalo have contributed to the industrial progress of this nation without much recognition. And producing that piece there, living in New York City, oftentimes, you think of these urban environments, not never would they have had a buffalo on
Right.
it. This is not a place where buffalo had been, but I can guarantee you over the million years of buffalo evolution, they stomped ground in every part of the land, adapted and changed and transitioned. But during the between 1840 and 1895, their population was reduced from 60 million to 1,500. And at that time, this is the Industrial Revolution of the United States. There's just a whole story about what happened to buffalo and how they became a part of U.S. economy and how it affected industries that you never think would be affected by it. One of them was early steel production. So here was a way to present that brief kind of look into it as something that would change due to the environment it was exhibited in.
I'm fascinated by the sculpture. And for me, it is representative of your use of weather finishing the art piece, but also your continued investigation of time. I feel like that's another big theme in your work. So Attrition is this buffalo skeleton made out of steel, half sunk in the earth, surrounded by native grasses. Its back is showing, its eyes are barely above the ground. And I've read that the piece is meant as a haunting reminder of what's been erased in urban spaces, which I kind of see in my mind as like time slowly consuming things. And you've also said that you use this piece to illustrate, and I love this, the fuzzy overlap of where things begin and end. So why choose steel for the sculpture?
I think building it out of that material was a specific choice to kind of express the process of early steel production and how at that time the United States coincidentally had this insane amount of buffalo bones across the plains and had to figure out what to do with them because they were actually inhibiting Western expansion. Most of those bones being found along the train lines, there were like letters that I read where people were like, as far as the eye can see, it looks as though it is a winter's frost, and yet it is June. Buffalo bones litter the plains. Like,
oh my
we're
God,
talking,
that's terrifying.
We're talking numbers that we can't comprehend.
Yeah.
And the total erasure of it was systematic. Like, the bones were collected, they were sent to carbon works back east and burned and turned into two primary products, calcium carbonate and bone black. And calcium carbonate, suddenly the country had a surplus of this material. By and large, it was used as a slow-releasing fertilizer and was given away 50-pound bags at a time to folks trying to build a better life for themselves as settlers on the plains. But there was so much of it, so much, that it was used in all sorts of things, one of which was a flux for steel production, which then built the railroads, built the bridges, built the barbed wire. Like, it's so entangled in the...
If that isn't metaphoric, I don't know what is.
This is the thing. Like, that piece is not submerging into the land. That piece is emerging from the land. It's a history emerging.
Okay.
You know?
Here's the thing that I thought that maybe I was like, Paddy, you fuzzy teddy bear, maybe you're just leaning towards hope a little too much, because as I was looking at the sculpture and seeing the buffalo, right, disappearing, I had to stop myself and ask, like, well, is it actually rising out of the earth? Is it reanimating? Is it being revitalized? Was that purposeful? Are you telling me that was on purpose, or am I way off here?
No. The original ceramic piece that it was derived from was actually two buffalo, and it was decided to be presented in museum spaces, and it was called Emergent, and it was about histories that have been overlooked or ignored emerging. And I was like, the history, the knowledge, the awareness that we could gain as a nation around the truth of our history actually becomes the source material to transform what we want, what we like, what we desire. I'm interested in the long game, and we're talking about time, you know?
Yeah.
And this is a podcast that's called Outside, and I'm like, tethered to indigenous knowledge, and once again, physics reinforces general relativity, is space-time is a continuum. So outside is time. The space we inhabit is also time. They're intrinsically the same thing. So if space radiates in all directions, so too does time. And if time radiates in all directions, the linear concept of it is just that. It's an overlay. So how do I navigate?
Yeah.
How do I navigate it? How do
Yeah.
I go back? How do I repair things in history by imagining possibilities for our future? Like, that's the time travel I'm interested in, you know?
Ooh, oh, that doesn't make your head and your heart explode all at the exact same time. But thank you for bringing it up, because your ideas around time and your critique of this idea of a linear experience of time is, I think, thematically represented in everything that you create. You have this idea that you feel that time radiates in all directions, like you just said. And you have this quote where you say, the present is able to borrow from the future. And I kind of visualize this as ripples on a pond where, the outer rings were once the center rings at one point. But I need your help here, because I need you to explain this idea to me without breaking my head in half. Can you please explain what you mean by time radiating out in all directions?
So space is radiating, space is expanding, right? It's moving in all directions. They are a part of the same thing. They're a continuum. They're parts of the same expression in our universe. As space radiates, so do these distances, and time isn't a tick on a clock, but rather the perception of navigating distance. So time and space are the same thing. And we're expressing time on a rock whipping through space,
Spaceship Planet Earth.
yeah. And, and it's whipping around a sun, and the sun's whipping around another thing. And all of it is expanding.
Yeah.
So you have to first accept the fact that space and time are the same thing. Now, what's wild about this, and why I say our present is borrowing from the future, facts. The choices we are making today will affect our future, but we understand the value of things and not the cost. And it's our future generations that will experience the cost.
I figured that your response would be pretty heady, and it was. And thank you very much. And so my follow-up question is, to what extent has time outside influenced your thinking that time radiates everywhere?
I was young when my mom moved into the Southwest. She's also an artist. And I think when you go to public school, you're rewarded by learning things, right? Like, okay, get your grades. There's promises of future in you doing something right now,
Okay, yeah.
When you have a cultural tradition that is primarily oral, your stories are not necessarily embedded in the overlying popular culture stories. So I'm sitting here learning American history, social studies, all of these sorts of things. And I had contrary information to what I was being taught. And in that, it made me question everything. I was like, if I make this lie and it's the right answer to this question, what else is BS? So now I'm really doing the math. Now I'm really paying attention in biology. I'm like, how far does the slipping of influence and power describe the world that we inhabit? Now, that in itself at the time, I could not make a connection to the question that you're asking me about time rating in all directions and being able to navigate that. But as I got older, I started to realize that some of these bits of information that were stored in my own personal life past actually began to make more sense as I got older. And I think anybody could attest to that experience, right? Like you may learn a certain thing, but as you get older, you actually understand it. So much of our cultural history was recorded in a variety of texts and tomes. And that gave certain cultures power over everybody else, because there was a written history that recorded that sort of thing. But what I started to realize was that so much of that information, the older versions of that information, predate writing. The history of human beings has been sculpted and painted and carved into materials as artworks, these visual languages. I have access to them. And because I have access, I can reverse engineer it. I can change the meaning of it. in the present. I can do all of these sorts of things to this object that was created generations ago to embed some cultural significance to the people in which it was created. If I have access to all of these sorts of things, and I'm a ceramic artist, I do textiles, I paint, I do everything that I possibly can. I'm like, maybe the pieces that I'm making right now are time machines. Like, maybe we don't have time machines because we have time machines. Because this is a vase, this is a broken sculpture of a bust, this is a painting on a cave. We still have access to those, so those are still navigating through the continuum of space and time. And because we can be exposed to it, then we are literally traveling into the past to understand. And what I started to recognize was, because I'm alive right now was probably because the people before me made choices thinking of my future. They were borrowing my existence, and I am borrowing future.
It is now time for the final ramble. One piece of gear you cannot live without.
Knife.
That was so quick and easy.
Dude, look, I literally have it on me right now.
The daily carry. Nice. I like your style. Yep.
Yeah.
Gotta have it. I feel like if I leave the house without my knife, I feel like I'm not wearing pants.
Oh yeah. No. There is a certain form of nudity that a missing pocket knife is. I'd sacrifice socks,
Facts.
Pants.
Facts.
I'm like, I'll go out
Facts.
underwear if I have a place to clip my knife.
Facts. Oof, great answer. Best outdoor snack.
You know what? I like water.
Dude, not a single person has said water. Wow. Wow. It's right. It was right there the whole time, guys.
There are few beverages that I find more gratifying than water when you're thirsty. Holy smokes.
Great answer. Oh, just head of the class. Head of the class, man. What is your hottest outdoor hot take?
When I hike, I assume I am the scariest thing out there, right? And so that allows me to not be afraid of bears, not be afraid of cats, not be afraid of things along those lines. But this is the hottest part of the hot take.
Okay.
I can't think of a better way to go than being consumed by some wild animal, Like,
what?
Come on. What? Like, statistically, car accident, heart attack, statistically, I think I would take a wild cat, a bear, a shark. If this happens to me, I don't want anybody to feel bad. I think that is probably maybe the best way to go.
It is an outrageous thought. You know what? That's why we asked the question. I gotta tell you.
That's my hottest hot take.
Consumed by the Rancor monster. Like, what? Like, I have... Wow.
No, it would be a good end, I think, to this adventure, being alive. And then that you're food, which is great. I'm into it.
That is a unique answer. And it is not often that a talker like me, a professional chit-chatter, really doesn't have anything to say. So, good job on all accounts.
Great. I want some, big cat out there to be like, Cannupa. Cannupa is my favorite wild snack.
Dude. Hey, guys, do you notice that when Cannupa goes hiking, he's packing his pockets with just raw steaks? Do you have any idea why he's doing that? I don't know, man. Anyways, let's go for a hike. Dude,
yeah.
What? Oh, awesome.
Tube meats. It's full circle, dude.
Full circle. Once again.
Full circle. Tube meats. Everybody likes tube meats.
Outdoorsy, human-sized hot dogs. Dear God. Dude, this is awesome.